Good morning. Welcome to the Church360 Ledger Generating Reports webinar. I'll be your host today. My name is Jordan Bogart. I'm a software support technician here with Concordia Technology Solutions. I've been here for a little over 8 years now, and I've really appreciated the opportunity I've had here to serve our churches throughout the country. It's really been a huge blessing just to help bring the gospel to so many people, and so I really appreciate that opportunity. I do want to mention here that all phones and microphones have been muted for today's session, so if you have any questions at all, in the questions window there, you should have that in your GoToWebinar toolbar there. You should have a questions window where you can ask any questions you may have during today's webinar. Now, don't hold back. If you think of a question, just go ahead and ask it as soon as you think about it. Myself, or joining me today is my manager, Rod Kiles. And he's going to be, so he'll be joining us here today for to answer any questions you guys might have as well. So you can see there's Rod right there. So either one of us will be happy to help you guys out with any questions you might come across during today's webinar. Okay, so let's go ahead and just do a brief overview of what our class is going to be structured like. So, we're doing our overview right now, of course, and we're going to get into our discussion, talking about different reports, and we'll get into what reports we're going to be talking about in the bank reconciliation process, of course, as well. And then there'll be time for a quiz here at the end. Now, no pressure on you guys here for the quiz. This is just more making sure you're retaining kind of what I had said here during today's training. So, again, no pressure on you guys for that. And then there is a Q&A session here at the end. If you were holding on to any questions for the end, this is a place where you can ask those. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the content of today's session and what kind of things we're going to be talking about. So again, today we're going to be talking about reports. The reports we'll be talking about today are the general ledger report, income and expense, the chart of accounts report, the balance sheet, and we're also going to be talking about the bank reconciliation process. Okay, so that's kind of the items we're going to be covering here specifically today. Oh, sorry, we're also going to be talking about the event log. Forgot to mention that. So we will be talking about the event log here as well. Then we'll be jumping into our quiz, and then finally our Q&A session. So that's kind of the structure of today's class. It's what we're going to be covering today. So with all that in mind, let's go ahead and get things started. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera here so you guys can kind of focus on what's on screen. Now, let me go ahead and just bring up our Church360 Ledger page. There it is. All right, so I'm operating off of a demo account here today for Church360 Ledger. And we're going to be talking about, again, we're going to be talking about reports. Now, kind of one thing I want to mention about reports just in general is that the reports, when you're running them, are only for the book that you're currently in. So like I'm in the Christ Community Church book, but you can see I have different books here for different things. So just bear in mind when you're running your report, it's only for the book that you're currently in. You're not going to see any accounts from other books. All right, so let's go ahead and start things off here by talking about our general ledger report. So I'm going to click on the reports icon up here at the top of the page, and I'm going to choose general ledger. Okay, so this is going to take me to my general ledger window. So what the general ledger is going to show us is every single line item for every single transaction over the time period that we've selected. Now, to select the time period that you would like to look at, click the date button up here, and you will see first off every single year that we have in the system. This is a demo account that goes several years back, so you can see I can go all the way back to 2012 if I wanted to, but I can pick a particular year by clicking on that year. I can also, go back to the current year. And once I pick a year, I can also say, well, I want to see just the first quarter of the year, or I want to see just February of 2022, for example. So I can kind of pick and choose that way. Or if I want to have a specific date range in mind, I can go ahead and set my date range down here. A little calendar will come up, and you can set the dates that you want to look at. Okay. I'm just going to keep it simple, and we're just going to look at all of 2022 so far. All right, I'll click outside the box. I'll click the box that closes that date selector, and let's take a look at what information is provided to us here in the general ledger report. So to start out, all our transactions are listed by date. You're going to see all your transactions listed from the latest transactions here on the top all the way down to the earliest transactions at the very bottom. So that's what we're going to be seeing date range wise. Next, we can see what type of transaction we're looking at here. So you'll see checks, payments, deposits, journal entries, transfers. You'll see all the different transaction types here that my associate Taylor covered in her previous training. Now, what I can do here is if I want to, for example, I just want a check register. I want to see just my checks. What I could do is I could click this little this arrow here, and I'm going to get a list with all the transaction types here, and I can check or uncheck whichever one I want. I'm going to uncheck the all option, so I'm deselecting all the transaction types. And then if I just click check, then I'm going to be left with just my checks here. So this is going to somewhat acts as a check register for us, because then I can just see my checks during that time period. Okay. So I can do that. Next, I have the check number field. Now, the check number field is going to show us for our check transactions, whatever the check number is. So if you have a check number assigned for a check transaction, you'll see it here. Then you'll get the payee. And the payee is, of course, the person or organization or company that was paid. Now, if you want to filter down to a specific payee, you can click this drop list here, just like we did with the type. And let's say I want to see just my transactions here for gateway building and repair. Okay, so I can select them, and during 2022, this is the only transaction I have for gateway building and repair, just this check here. So I can see that there, and this does bring a point here. This is showing you, again, I did mention this shows every line item of every transaction. So for example here, this is coming out of the building fund restricted account, which is a reduction of $250. And this went against the building fund maintenance expense account, which would be an increase of an expense, so an increase of $250. So that's what that's showing you there. That's why you see two lines for one check. Okay, so I can filter by payee that way. Now, another option we have is to group by payee. If I click group by payee, what this is going to do is still going to be showing me all my payees, but instead of sorting by, instead of organizing this by date, it's going to sort our transactions by payee. So up top, I'm going to see all my transactions that don't involve payee. So this is going to be a lot of deposits mostly. But if I scroll down through here, now I'm getting, here's everything for Ameren Electric, and there's all their transactions, and there's something for Arlene Dowling. So you can see, this is a way you can kind of group your general ledger by payee. And again, this can be helpful when it comes to, preparing reports. I'm going to click this ungroup option. So ungroup it. So that makes it easy to go ahead and, kind of organize that the way you want. Now, next here, we have the account drop list. Now, again, this is showing you which account it was used on each particular line item. And again, you can go through here and filter to just particular accounts. So like if I want to see, well, hey, what transactions do I have for building repairs? Well, okay, here we go. I have I had a check on 3/28 to John & Sons Construction for building repairs or drywall repair. Okay, so I have that there. So I can kind of go through and set that up. And then I have the group option here, just like I did with the payee. And again, I could group my transactions here by account. So now I'm seeing all my transactions sorted out by account. So again, that can be very helpful as well. All right, then I get the memo line. So if there's any memos for any of your transactions, you'll see those memos listed here. And then finally, you get the amount of the transaction. Now, a number in red in parentheses represents a reduction in that account. A number in black represents that account going up. So pretty standard there. Now, if you'd like to print this report out, there is a print option up here right at the top of the page. Click print, and this is going to prompt your web browser to print out this view. So you'll see here, it'll let you know the number of sheets of paper. Now, again, this may vary a little bit depending on which web browser you're using. I'm using Google Chrome in this case, so this is what the print dialog box looks like for Google Chrome, and you'll be able to select your printer. If you want only certain pages or certain more copies, you can kind of adjust that all there. And when you're done, you'll click print, and then that's going to go ahead and print out your general ledger for you. And you also get your date range right up here at the top too. Okay. Now you do also have the option to export this out to Excel. So this can be very handy also. So let's take a look at the general ledger report when we take it out to Excel. Okay, so I'll click on that, and this prepares the general ledger report down here in an Excel spreadsheet. So I can click on this, and this pulls up Microsoft Excel. And I'm going to take this full screen, and I'm going to say enable editing, because I want to be able to make some changes here if I need to. Okay, so this is what the general ledger report will look like in Excel. Now, I do want to point out two things because there are a few additional columns here. First up, we have an account number column. So if you've assigned account numbers to some of your accounts here and you want to be able to see those here, this export to Excel will also include your account numbers on it. I also want to point out that now there's also a voided column here. This is going to tell us, point out any of our voided transactions. Now, I forgot to mention, so let me go back for just a moment. Any of these transactions that show up in pink, or sort of this reddish pink here, this is a voided transaction, and your voided transactions will appear on your general ledger. This is a sort of an auditing tool here, because basically no one's going to have the ability to write, for example, write a check, print it out, and then void the check, and then take it over the bank, and then you're looking through the system and you can't find that fraudulent check they wrote. Well, this would help you track that down, because again, voided transactions never really fully disappear from the system. They're always present here in the general ledger. Now, we do have a voided column in the Excel spreadsheet because it doesn't use those colors here. Instead, we have a voided column. And the nice part about this voided column is it will tell you the date a particular transaction was voided on. Now, this happened to be wrote on 10/3, but also voided that very same day. But you might have some variance on that. So you might have a transaction here, like we wrote this one for July 26th, but we voided it here on the 27th. So again, this gives you a little more insight into what you've done here with your transactions. Now, I do sometimes hear, well, I want to see a general ledger without my voided transactions. How could I accomplish that? Well, here in the Excel spreadsheet, that's probably the easiest way to do that. What we'll go ahead and do first off is we'll need to get rid of these first couple rows. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight rows 1 through 4. And I'm just doing that by clicking and dragging on the row numbers here. And then what I can do is I can right click and then click delete. And that will remove those top 4 rows. So now my column header, my first row is the column headers of my general ledger report. So then what I could do is I could highlight the entire table here, the entire spreadsheet. I can click on this, it highlights the entire thing. Then what I could do is I could go to data, from data I could go to sort, and from sort I could say sort this by my voided transactions. Okay, and then if I click OK, this is going to bring all my voided transactions to the top. So then if I don't want those voided transactions here, I could just go through and highlight each row that I want, each row that has a voided transaction in it, highlights them all, and then I can just right click, delete, and that gets rid of those voided transactions on your Excel spreadsheet. Now, bear in mind, this doesn't actually affect your Church360 ledger. This is an Excel spreadsheet that has now been exported from Church360 ledger, and again, anything you do here doesn't have any effect on your system. But this is just a good way to be able to kind of go through and find, just your non-voided transactions, so you can see all the different transactions that are actually affecting your chart of accounts. So that's the general ledger report. I'm going to go ahead and close this out, and let's go ahead next and let's take a look at our income and expense report. So I'm going to click on the reports icon here, and we're going to choose income and expense. Now, here we are at our income and expense report. First thing I want to point out here is the date selector. So again, we can set the date range that we would like to look at. We have the ability to set this by year, by quarter, by month. But you'll notice here in the date range, I can set a month and a year, but I can't set down to a specific date. And this is because the income and expense report uses budget, and the smallest kind of measure we can break down a budget to is a single month. So we can't do like a partial month income and expense report. Now, typically that's not much of a problem. Usually you're only really looking at income and expense on a monthly basis. So this is not really much of a problem. But again, you cannot go down to a specific day. So I want to just point that out, just to kind of bring that to your guys' attention. All right, well, let's go ahead and say we're looking at Q2 for our income and expense here. And let's just see what we have going on with that. So I'm looking at the second quarter of 2022. And the first thing I'm going to see here is the account column. This is going to show me all my accounts. And you might have noticed there's several lines here that have the this triangle, and the line here, the text here is underlined. Now, this is actually not an account itself. Like, I don't have an account called income. I don't have an account called offerings either. These are our categories from our chart of accounts here. So I have a category called unrestricted income. I have a category under that called offerings, and I have another category under that called funds for our income here. But these are not accounts themselves. What I mean by that is they are really just an aggregate of all the different accounts and categories under them. So for example, this offerings category, this is summing up everything from offerings all the way down through social concerns here, because these categories here are all under the heading of offering. Above that, unrestricted income is saying, okay, we'll have everything from unrestricted income all the way down through rental income here. That's under the banner of unrestricted income. Now, the category totals obviously don't sum up into other categories, but the account totals do. So that's how it's figuring out those categories. So that's what we're seeing there. Now, the next line we're going to see here is the budget for the time period that we're looking at. So this is the budget. This is the Q2 budget for my different accounts. So this is saying, you know, here's what we, in the case of income, expect to bring in during Q2. And if I scroll down a little ways, I should also show you the expenses here as well. This is what we expect to spend in Q2. Okay, so we see that there. That's the budget. Now the actual is what we actually brought in or we actually spent over that same time period. So you can see here, compared to our budget, this is actually a good thing here, because we're seeing, well, hey, we expected to only bring in $5,150 in the general fund during this time, but really we brought in nearly $10,000 in that time. So that's a good thing here as far as income is concerned. Now, you don't want to see that out in expense. You don't want to see you don't want to see your actuals be higher than your budget down in expense, because what that's saying is we spent more than we were expecting to. So again, just kind of a comparison thing you can do there. It does provide you with a percentage of budget you've used. Again, seeing a number over 100% is a good thing for income. That's saying we brought in more than we were expecting to. Whereas seeing a figure over 100% in expense is a bad thing. That's saying, hey, we've spent more than we were expecting to. So again, things to consider over there as well. All right, and then finally you have your budget remaining. Now, budget remaining, this is saying over this time period, how much of our budget do we have left? Now, again, just like with the percentage, actually seeing the numbers in red here are good for income, because what that's saying is, again, we brought in more than we were expecting to. Whereas, again, seeing numbers in the black is what you want to see here in expense. That's saying we still have some budget remaining here in this time period. So we have a little bit of wiggle room to work with. Seeing numbers in the red basically means, hey, we've overspent our budget here. So again, we get all that. I also want to point out here at the very bottom, we get income less expense. This is taking our total income budget here in the budget column and subtracting our total expense budget. So right now, we're actually projected to have a deficit of $6,126 in Q2, but the actuals tell a different story, because this is the actual column, and this is saying what we actually brought in compared to what we actually spent. And here we had a surplus of just over $4,000. So we actually came out quite a bit ahead. And again, seeing numbers in the red is good here. This is saying we kind of outperformed our budget here by a pretty significant amount. So again, good thing to see. Now, this is what our income and expense report is going to look like. Again, I have the option to print that out. If I click print, I get the print window here. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Let me close that. I also have the ability, of course, to export this to Excel. Okay. And if I export to Excel, here's the here's the income and expense report. This is what it would look like out in Excel. And I can enable my editing. Now I do want to point out the bolded lines here. Like if I go to the bolded figure for unrestricted income, if you're familiar with Excel, you might notice here, well, this is $5,885, but it's giving me a line of cell references here. And we're adding these all up. This is actually a formula. So this is actually not what this is doing, and this is adding up all these different cell references to get to this amount. So what this means is, for example, if I were to fill in a figure in a music ministry here and said, okay, well, we actually have a budget of $500 for a music ministry, and I press enter, you'll see that will adjust all of our income then by that amount, because that's all, these are all formulas. So this again is a way we can kind of experiment with things, see how making changes might change our budget. Now again, just remember, any changes to an Excel spreadsheet don't go back and affect your actual Church360 ledger. This is more of just kind of a testing ground for you to work with. You are going to make changes here. Now the lines that aren't bolded are your accounts. So this is actually the true figure here on this account. This is what this is saying here. Now, oftentimes, this is right now we're just looking at Q2 of 2022, and oftentimes we get asked, well, I want to look at a comparison of maybe like here a particular quarter to year to date, or a particular quarter to the entire year. How would I do something like that? Well, what I could do here is I'm going to first off, again, I'm going to get rid of this kind of these title rows here. So I'll highlight these, right click and delete. And then I could go back to ledger. And let's say I want to look at Q2 compared to the entire year. So I'm going to select all of 2022, and I'm going to export that out to Excel also. So let me pull that up. There we go. Okay, and so now I'm looking. So now I have also a spreadsheet open that's looking at the entire year. I'm going to get rid of the header rows on this as well. So what I could do if I want to see this information all in one spreadsheet is I could go through here and I could highlight the entire budgets 2022 column in my second spreadsheet, right click it, copy it, and then what I could do is I could click over here and let's say I want to see the 2022 budgets to the right of the Q2 2022 budgets. So I could click here, right click, insert copied cells, and now I'm seeing here's my Q2 budget, here's my overall 2022 budget, and I have those now side by side. And I could do the same thing with my actuals here also. So I could go here and grab my actuals here, copy this, insert copied cells, and there we go. So now I have a Q2 comparison to my overall budget, and I have a Q2 comparison to my overall actuals. So now I'm seeing that all listed on one report. So it's pretty easy to kind of just mash these reports together to get what you're looking for here. So that's the income and expense report. So let's go ahead here and let's continue on. Let me close that out. The next report we're going to look at here is our chart of accounts report. So let's click here and let's take a look at chart of accounts. All right. So here at the chart of accounts report, the chart of accounts report here is going to show us every single account we have in the system. This is going to include your restricted funds also. So we're going to see every single account we have in the book we have pulled up. Now, again, I can go over here and set the date. You'll notice we're back to being able to select down to a particular date. So we'll go ahead and just take a look at all of 2022 here. And let's take a look and see what the chart of accounts report is showing us. Now, just like the income and expense report earlier, we do have categories here. So I can actually go through and I can actually expand and collapse these categories as well. So like if I don't want to see everything under checking, I just want to see a total for the checking category. And this is true back on the income and expense report as well. I can just click on this to collapse it. So I don't have to see all the individual accounts under it. I'm just seeing the total for the category. So that's what that's trying to show us there. All right, so you'll see all of your accounts, and this is going to be in the same order that you have them over on the chart of accounts screen. And then what you'll see here is you'll see the starting net balance for whatever time period you've selected. So this is what the balance was in this case on January 1st, 2022. Then you'll get the ending balance for whatever date time period you've selected. Okay, so you'll be able to see what the ending balance was. And then you'll see total debits on this account, total credits, and then the actual change in this account. And then of course you'll get the percentage change as well. Now this is great for finding out changes over time. You can kind of see, well, hey, from point A to point B, where do we start? Where do we go to? And again, this is great way to kind of find that change over time. Now, because it also lists the debits and credits, sometimes we'll get asked about, well, is it possible to do a trial balance report here inside of Church360 Ledger? Yes, It is absolutely possible. Because we have these debits and credits, what we could do is when we take this out to Excel, we could sum up all the debits and credits on all the accounts. You'll want to leave off your categories and make sure those are in balance. Now, of course, the purpose of a trial balance report is to make sure that our debits and credits are in balance. So this is going to be a great way to find that out. Now, I can print this out if I'd like. Again, here's the printable version of that report. This is what it's going to look like. Okay. And of course, I can take it out to Excel. So if I take it out to Excel, this is what the Excel spreadsheet is going to look like. There we go. Oh, that's the income and expense. I should actually close that out. There we go. Okay, and this is what this will look like here. And it does also note here, any accounts with an asterisk by it are inactive accounts. Inactive accounts will be included here on the report, but the system will note those for you so you can go through those. And if you don't want those there, you can always run through and delete those rows off. But this is going to give you your chart of accounts report. It gives you the balance as of and the balance as of here. So you get the starting and ending dates. You get your debits and credits. You get your percentage, your value of the change and the percentage change. Again, these bolded lines are categories, so they are composed of formulas, which means, again, if you change account totals here, it will change the totals and the amounts in the categories. And again, any change you make here out in Excel will not affect what you actually have in Ledger. Again, this just kind of acts more of a test as a testing ground. All right, that's the chart of accounts report. Let's continue on. All right, so the next report we're going to take a look at here is our balance sheet report. Now, the balance sheet report is actually laid out very similar. In fact, it uses the same columns as the chart of accounts report. The difference here, though, is that the chart of accounts report is only taking a look at our assets and our liabilities. That's the idea of a balance sheet report. We're comparing what we own to what we owe. Again, we can set our date range right up here. We do have our categories just like we have before, but you'll notice here in Essential Trust Checking, I'm also not seeing any of my restricted funds. The restricted fund totals are just rolled up into the balances here. So I don't have to worry about those individual restricted funds. So I'm seeing all that there. So I'm seeing all my assets, again, starting balance, ending balance, debits, credits, dollar amount change, and percentage change. And then I have all my liabilities, and it's the same thing. Starting balance, ending balance, debits, credits, dollar amount change, percentage change. The very bottom, we get assets less liabilities. And this is a good way to get a kind of a picture of your church's overall financial state, because this is going to take your total assets, subtracting out your total liabilities, and kind of giving you an idea of what position your church is in, kind of to be able to see, hey, are we carrying a lot of debt? Are we carrying a lot of debt? Are we doing, are we coming out ahead? Kind of how are we sitting here as a church? And this is a good way to find that out. Now, again, just like the other reports, you have the option to print this report out. You also have the option to export this out to Excel. So again, another kind of nice option we offer here. Now, I do have a few other reports I didn't mention here in the outline. I do want to briefly just talk about just a couple of things. First off, sometimes we do get asked about a budget report. Is it possible to get like a budget report I could present to my church council? Absolutely. Now, we talked about budgets in an earlier training, but you do have the ability here in this budgets view, after you've gone through and you've set up your budgets. If you're wanting to present a budget report to your church council, for example, you would set whichever year that you're wanting to run a budget for. And after you've selected your year, then you'd click export it to Excel. And then this would you take it out to an Excel spreadsheet, which this is something you could very easily present to your church council. And then your church council can make suggestions. You can go through here and kind of figure out the changes you want to make in your budget, maybe even note them in your spreadsheet, and then take it back here to Church360 Ledger and make adjustments as needed. So that can be a very helpful thing to have also. Another thing I'd like to show here is under payees. With payees here, I could go ahead and get a payee history for any of my payees here. So when I move my mouse over a particular payee, I'll see a history button pop up here. And if I click on history, this is going to go ahead and bring up the payee history for whatever time period I have selected here. Now, the payee history is going to be more of just an overall view of the account. It's going to show the total debits and total credits for this particular payee during this time period. Of course, you can print this out. You can print it, take it out to Excel. If you're wanting to see more of an itemized view for a payee, what you probably want to do instead is you'll want to go to the general ledger for the time period and say, all right, let's just see what we have here for John and Sons Construction, for example. And this is going to show me all the transactions for that particular payee. So that might be a little better if you're looking for something a little more itemized. Now, finally, let's go back to the home screen. Sometimes we also get asked, well, is it possible to see a ledger for just a particular account? And yes, absolutely it is. So let's go ahead here. And let's say I want to know a little bit more about one of my expense accounts. So you'll notice here there's these boxes along the top of the page. This allows us to drill down into various categories. I want to get into my expense section. And I have my different categories here. Let's go ahead and look into support staff. And let's look at our salaries. I want to look at what we've been paying out in staff salary during this time. So I'm seeing all my staff salary account here. And this is showing me all the transactions for the time period that I have selected. Again, I can come up here and select whatever time period I'd like to look at. This also provides us with a running balance on this account. So I can see here every single transaction and how that's affected the running balance during this time. So this can be extremely helpful to get more insight into particular accounts. You could print this out, you can take it out to Excel. This makes it very easy to go ahead and get more information about a particular account, which sometimes is needed. All right, so with all that in mind on reports, let's go ahead next and let's talk about the bank account reconciliation process. Now, for the bank account reconciliation process, the number one thing you're going to need is you're going to need the bank statement for the month that you're wanting to reconcile. Now, I will recommend that when you're reconciling, you do only try to go a month at a time. If you try to go more than 1 month, and I've definitely worked with customers who have tried to do this before, it usually ends up getting pretty messy pretty quick and very difficult to negotiate. So I would recommend just doing a month at a time. Even if you have, kind of several months worth of catch up to do, really you're going to be better served by going a month at a time, because that's going to make it easier to find different mistakes. And that's kind of the idea of the bank reconciliation. Really, we want to be using this to find spots where maybe we made a mistake or two, to kind of clean those up and make sure we're in sync with our bank here. All right, so once you have your bank statement, let's say I'm going through here and I'm wanting to reconcile the month of August here. So I'm going to click on, first off, let's go here and we're looking at 2022. And let's say I have my bank statement for the month of August. Now, with that bank statement for the month of August, I'm looking through here and, I notice, hey, I have something here from last month. I have a deposit here from back in July that, it never really cleared, it didn't clear the bank because it was on the very last day of the month. Maybe we got it to the bank late that day and they didn't process it to the next day. Now, that can happen. What's probably more common though, and probably what you'll see more frequently, is that you have a check that maybe an employee or somebody you've written for somebody that maybe you've written that check, but they just haven't gotten to the bank yet. So in the case of that, typically what I would recommend is I would recommend looking for your lowest check number and finding that check number here on the ledger and then saying, oh, this is the check, this is the date I need to start from. So again, I'm not saying for this one we're not going to use it, but let's say in this case our lowest check number on our statement was 7521. So I would actually, even though I'm trying to reconcile the month of August, I would actually set this for June 28th, 22, because I have a check for that dates back that far. Now in this case, I'm just going to say the only outstanding transaction we had from a prior month was this deposit on July 31st. Okay, so we have that now. So what I'm going to do, now that I know my oldest transaction, I'm going to come up here to the date box and I'm going to set my date range for July 31st, since that's my oldest transaction, and I'm going to date that all the way through the end of the month of August. So I'm going to click here, and let's set that for July 31st. And then I'm going to set my ending date for August 31st. Okay, so there we go. So now I'm looking exclusively at the date range that might contain transactions that are on my bank statement. Okay. So now that I've done that, this is going to help narrow down our focus and kind of eliminate some of the distraction that we might have from other months' transactions. So now what I can do here is I can go through and I can drill down to my bank account. So I'm going to do just what I did for the expenses here earlier. I'm going to click on assets and I'm going to drill down through my categories until I get to my checking account that I'm reconciling. So I'm going to go to Central Trust, checking, and then Central Trust checking, and there I am. I'm at my checking account here. I have my date range set, and you'll notice there's a green reconcile button here now. This is how we get into our reconciliation mode. So I'm going to click reconcile, and this is going to take us into our reconciliation mode. Now this is pretty hard to mistake. It's bright green, so you're going to be able to know when you're reconciling your bank statement here. So what we'll want to go ahead and do now is we'll want to fill out this statement section. This is going to be filled out with information that we have from our bank statement. So first up here, statement date. Typically speaking, this is going to be the last day of the month. Really, it should probably be the last date that the statement lists a transaction for. But I'm going to go, you're pretty usually safe to just say this is the end of whatever month you're reconciling. So I'm going to say the last statement date was August 31st. Okay. Next, I want to put in the starting balance and the ending balance according to my bank statement. Okay, so whatever my bank statement says, that's what I'm putting in for my starting and ending balance. So this bank statement here that I have is saying I started this month at a balance of $25,000 on the nose, and my ending balance for the month ended up being $24,512.88. Okay. So that's what I started the month with according to the bank. This is what I ended the month with according to the bank. Now, when I go through here, this provides me next with the statement difference. The statement difference is the difference between my starting balance and the ending balance according to my bank statement. I then have my selected difference. The selected difference is the sum of all the transactions that I am going to be clearing off. Right now it's a 0 because I haven't marked any transactions being cleared. Finally, the off by is the difference between my statement difference and my selected difference. The goal of this reconciliation is to get my selected difference to match my statement difference, therefore making my off by 0. So that's how we were going to want to approach this. Now, this is a pretty short reconciliation. I barely even have like a page worth of transactions, but typically when you guys do your reconciliation, you'll have some more transactions to work with. So it might be difficult to find what you're looking for. That's why we provide a filtering option to help you find particular transactions. So for example here, oh, I had this check for $94.87. I just can't find it. Well, according to my bank statement, I have $94.87. Well, okay, I can type that in. Oh yeah, I actually have 2 checks for that time period here for $94.87. All right, well, that's no problem. All right, well, let's go ahead here then. I can also search by a memo. Well, let's see if I can find the gas bill. Oh, well, same transaction. There we go. Or maybe, hey, I have a particular payee here. So let's see. Maybe we had something here for Derek Woods. Oh, yeah, we do. And I can start typing in Derek, and there it finds them. All right, so that's how we can filter for our transactions. But now what I would recommend doing here, now that you have your bank statement, you have your date range, you have your statement information all filled in, I would sit down with my bank statement. I'd specifically take a pencil, not a pen. And what I would do is I'd just scroll down to the bottom of my reconciliation, and then I would just start working my way through my bank statement. So I'd start at the top of my bank statement and say, all right, what's the first transaction I see on my bank statement? And in this case, let's pretend, hey, that deposit we saw here, well, that's the first one up. I'm going to check it off. And you'll notice now our selected difference went up to $800 because we have marked off a transaction that was a positive $800 on the account. And so what I do is with my bank statement, I take a look at it and say, okay, yep, I have this deposit to my bank account for $800. That matches, that agrees with what I have in my bank statement. I would check that off, and then I could continue on my way. Now, the reason I say do this in pencil is because, again, you know, if you've done a bank reconciliation before, you'll probably know that not everything comes out perfect the first try. You may have to make some adjustments. So you may need to back back away and you can erase that, then that makes things just a little bit easier. But you would go through then and just repeat that process. Just find find it on your bank statement, find what matches up inside a Church360 ledger, and just check things off as you go. All right. Now, a neat part about this is if you hover your mouse over selected difference, you will get a total of each transaction type. So you can get an idea of kind of how much you've cleared off for each type of transaction. So you'll go through here and let's just keep moving along our way here. And I can go through here and I'm reviewing my bank statement. Okay, yeah, the gas bill cleared, but oh, this check here for Kent Williams, he still hasn't cashed this one. I'm going to leave this one alone. Now, more than likely, you are not going to clear off every single transaction on what you're seeing here, because you're inevitably going to have some items that carry over to your next month because they didn't clear the bank in your current month. It would be very unusual if you cleared off every single transaction. But you would go through here, you keep checking things off. And once you've gone through your bank statement and you said, okay, I'm to the bottom of it here, and you go, wait a second, this off by still isn't at zero. What happened? Well, there's a lot of things that can happen that can cause your bank statement to be off. You might have a transaction that was entered in the incorrect amount. You might have checked off an extra transaction here. You might not have a transaction that you have on your bank statement that you don't have here. There's a lot of things that can happen. So if you notice that there's some mistakes here and your off by is still off and you figured out what the problem is and you need to go correct it, what you can do is you can click on the home button here, this orange box with the $sign, and this will take you back to your home screen, and you can then do whatever you need to do. You can go through and edit transactions. You can click on this and make your changes here. You can add new transactions, you can void transactions, whatever you need to do to get this to be right. Now, once you've gone through here and you've made all your changes, then you're going to go back through and drill down to your account again. And the great part is, since I click this orange home button, this remembers exactly where I left off. So this didn't lose my place. It remembered where I was at, and then I can go ahead and continue on. So let's go ahead and clear off a few more items here. And oh, there we go. My reconciliation came out because my statement difference and selected difference match exactly. Okay. So now that I'm at this point, you'll notice I have a cancel and a save button here. Now, save is going to post your reconciliation. This is going to go through, and every transaction that I marked off is now going to be designated as being cleared in my system. Now, when a transaction is marked as clear, that's kind of your final stamp of approval on that transaction. You're saying that all the accounts are correct, you're saying the amounts are correct, the pay is correct, everything about it is correct. And the reason we're saying it's kind of our final stamp of approval is because once a transaction is marked as cleared, you can no longer make any changes to it. It is locked in and you can't void it anymore either. Really, the only recourse you would have if you get a transaction cleared and you realize later there was a mistake, you could make a journal entry that would reverse the debits and credits of the original transaction, and that would go through and kind of undo the cleared transaction. So that would be kind of how you can handle that. Now the cancel button, it will also take you out of the reconciliation, but instead of saving your place like we did up here with the orange $sign button, this just clears it all. So it kind of lets you start over. So again, don't get these cancel and home buttons confused. Really, if you need to get out of here to make some changes, click this home button. You'll only click this if you want to kind of clean the slate and start over. All right, but this reconciliation came out right, so I'm going to save it. And this reconciliation has now been cleared, and you'll notice every transaction that I marked as cleared now has a walk icon by it, indicating that it has been reconciled. So that is how we do our bank reconciliation. Now, you might be wondering, well, hey, is it possible for me to get a bank account reconciliation report? Absolutely. So what we could do here then is we can go back to our reports icon and we can go to the event log. And the event log is where we can go ahead and find everything that has happened here inside of Church360 Ledger. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to show my entire year. That this is all going to be based on when things actually happened. So I'm going to see here for the time period that I've selected, and again, I can select any time period I want. I'm going to see a few things. First off, I'm going to see a timestamp of when something happened. This is the exact date and time something happened on. Next, I'm going to see the action. This is telling me what kind of thing happened. Was something created? Was something destroyed? Was something finalized, printed, updated? And again, kind of just like we could in the general ledger here, I can filter for particular things. So let's say, okay, well, I want to just look at my, well, hold on here, let me refresh the page. I just want to see when anything was created here, and then I can filter to just that. Next thing, I'm going to see the type. What thing was, what was affected here, basically. So was this something that happened to an account? Was this something that happened to the budget, the payee, a reconciliation, a transaction? You can see it all here. Then you can see what user was signed in at the time. Now you'll see any different users there, and and again, it's all going to be listed by email address then, of course. So you'll see that there, or I'll say CTS if for some reason we came in and took an action. Typically, that would only that would really only happen usually when you put in like a support call to us. We would come in and help you make some changes. That's why you're going to see CTS on this. And then message is going to tell you actually what happened. Okay. Now for transactions, you'll see a kind of this background transaction ID, and you can with most of these you can click on these and see kind of what happened with these. Now you might have also noticed here with this reconciliation, I mentioned earlier, well, can you get a reconciliation report? And yes, you can. So where it says message here, it says reconciled, so many line items for central trust checking. I can click on this, and this is going to show me, hey, here's the account that I reconciled. Here's the statement date. Here's the starting balance. Here's the ending balance. And here's every transaction that I reconciled here. So then I have the ability to print this out or take it out to Excel, and that could act as your reconciliation report then. All right. So that is the reconciliation report and the event log. And with that, that's going to be what I have here for today. So let's go ahead now. Let's get over to our quiz. Now, for our quiz here, you're going to see some questions pop up here on screen, and you'll have the opportunity to answer these. Again, no pressure on you guys. I just want to make sure that what I said here sticks with you here. So let's go ahead and bring up our first question today. And our first question is a true or false question. The general ledger report shows both active and voided transactions. Is that true or false? So I'm going to launch the question here now, and you guys will be able to respond to what you think the answer is. So go ahead and answer on that, either true or false. The general ledger report shows both active and voided transactions. So I'm going to give everybody just a moment or two to submit their answer. Just seeing here, looks like about half of us have voted. I'll give you guys just another second or two here. And okay, doesn't look like we have any other responders. That's okay though. Go ahead and close this out. And we were unanimous here. Everybody said that's true. So is that true? Yes, absolutely. The general ledger report will show both active and voided transactions. If you don't wish to see voided transactions on your report, you can export to Excel and remove the voided transactions from there. All right. So next question up. Good job, guys. Next question up. True or false? When running your income and expense report, you can set down to the exact month, day, and year. Okay. For setting your date range, you can set down to the exact month, day, and year. Is that true? Thinking back to the income and expense report, can you set down to the month, day, and year? All right, I'm going to give everybody just another moment or two to get your answers in. Okay, and it doesn't look like anybody else wants to answer, so that's okay. Let's close that out. All right, now we had a split opinion on this one. So is this true or false? Well, that is false. The income and expense report uses budget information. Budgets can't be divided within the month, so you can select the exact month and year you're looking at, but not the day. So kind of tricky on that one. All right, next question up here. Another true or false question. The chart of accounts report can be used as a trial balance report. Talked about this briefly during the chart of accounts report. Can this be used as a trial balance report? So true or false on that one? I'm going to give everybody just a few seconds to get your answers in. chart of accounts report can be used as a trial balance report. To refresh your memory on what a trial balance report is, it's looking for a balance of debits and credits, making sure those are equal. All right. It looks like everybody has answered here. I'm going to close that on out. And all right, this was unanimous. Everybody said true, and yeah, that's true. This report shows the total credits and debits for each account for specific sums or totals. The reports can be exported to Excel and modified. So again, this could be used as a trial balance report if that's something you're looking for. All right, so next question up, multiple choice question here. You're working with the bank account reconciliation and you find out that you need to enter a transaction. What should you do? So you are in the middle of your reconciliation. 3 options here. You can either click the save button, click the cancel button, or click the orange $sign button. What should you do if you need to get out of the reconciliation and enter in another transaction? All right. Looks like most of us have submitted an answer. I'm going to give you just another second or two. And I'm going to go ahead and close that out. All right. Well, again, we were unanimous here. Everybody said C, and you are absolutely correct. Click the home button or that orange $sign button. This will take you out of the reconciliation, and it'll save your work. Once the transaction has been entered, just go back to the reconciliation, continue clearing transactions. You'll only want to click cancel if you want to start over, and that save button is for when you are actually done with your reconciliation and it's in balance. All right, final question today. True or false, to print a reconciliation report, go to the event log. True or false? Thinking about that reconciliation report, where do you go to get that? All right, most of us have answered. I'm not going to waste too much more time on that, so we're going to close that out. And yeah, true. A bank account reconciliation report can only be printed from the event log. All right, well, hey, good job, guys. You did well on the quiz here. Just kind of want to open up the floor to you guys. Do you guys have any questions about anything we covered here today? So any of those reports we covered here today, happy to talk about those with you. So go ahead and ask any questions. I'm going to just move on to the next slide here. You can continue typing out your question if you're typing one in here now. That's okay. And I just want to thank everybody for attending today's Church 360 Ledger webinar. Really hope you guys learned something new, and this is a helpful webinar to you guys. Take some knowledge back to your church and kind of help you guys build some reports out for your church's finances. So again, just want to thank everybody. That's all I have here for today. So if you're, I'll keep it open for a little bit if you're still typing out your question, but otherwise this is the end of today's training. And again, just thank you all for coming out today. Okay. Don't see any questions coming in, but I'll give it just another minute. Okay. All right. Well, I don't see any questions coming in. If you do think of any questions, just reach out to us in support. We're happy to help you guys out, and you guys have a wonderful day. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.